Hey, welcome to the Razzle Dazzle Show, a podcast where we talk about our favorite video games and all things pop culture with an emphasis on our favorites. I'm your host, Jared, and our guest today is Patricia Summersett. Patricia is a Canadian-American actor, voice artist, and music maker. She works in TV and film, performance capture, VO, and theater. In video games, she's known for such roles such as Princess Zelda in Nintendo's The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, and Hyrule Warriors, Age of Calamity, and Age of Imprisonment. Other game credits include the roles of Ash in Rainbow Six Siege, Hope Jensen and Galena in the Assassin's Creed series, and multiple roles in Star Wars Outlaws by Ubisoft. Some screen credits include Tahal in the series finale of Star Trek Discovery, Mother, Transplant, and Three Pines. Her band, aka Collective, the Summersett Band, has released 2 indie folk albums and is based in Montreal. Please let us know what you think about this episode somewhere on the internet, and be sure to follow us on Instagram at Razzle Dazzle Show, on TikTok at Razzle_Dazzle_Show, on Blue Sky at Raz-Show-Pod, and on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Raz_Daz_Pod. And with all that being said,
it's Razzle Dazzle time. Ooh.
Hello, Patricia. Thank you so much for coming on the show. How are you today?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
Like I said before recording, if I was doing any better, I'd have to hire somebody to help me enjoy it. I am ecstatic, and I'm so happy that I'm able to talk to you today, right now, and it's mind-blowing, you know? But before we get anywhere, I want to ask you, when was the last time you twizzled?
Oh my goodness. I want to say that I've been twizzling recently, but in terms of just general twizzling, probably the last time was like Philadelphia Comic-Con, too many games, and we did it on stage, and it just became this thing. It became like a twizzling contest.
Yeah,
essentially like dancing in the seat. It's a good time.
That's
panels.
Yeah, while doing research on you, I watched that panel, and that's why I asked. All right, well, now for real, can you tell us, where did you grow up, and how'd you describe the musical background of your childhood?
Oh, that's a nice question. So I grew up in Upper Michigan, very rural area. I spent a lot of time in the woods. And when I wasn't doing that, when I wasn't hanging out in the woods or on the shores of Lake Superior with my family, doing things like, swimming, boating, hiking, snowmobiling, that sort of thing, or just making fires and going out, on little treks camping. When I wasn't doing that, I was often in the ice rink, which was something that my mom set up for her 4 daughters, because there wasn't a lot going on there sport-wise other than hockey and, I guess, basketball and football, things like that. And so she ended up helping found this figure skating club. Mm-hmm. So we had something else to do to build skills. And so I would be doing that. And there was a lot of musical background that surrounded what we were dancing to at that time. Also at the time, which I don't do anymore, but my family went to church. Mm-hmm. And so we would do a lot of choir singing. And then my sisters and I would also just sort of go door to door and visit people and sing in harmonies together and sort of kind of dance and sing and try to lift people's days if they couldn't leave the house. So a lot of elderly in these smaller areas that don't get a lot of action. We would sort of be not required, but our mom was really into, giving us avenues of performance, but also that helped the community. She was very community active.
Right, like caroling.
Do that, yeah, exactly. And so just caroling, but for Halloween or kind of at Easter at random times of the year. And then we performed in the jamboree, like the local jamboree. And so my sister and I would do singing and dancing numbers. We were encouraged to sing and dance, which I'm really, really grateful to my parents for now. And that was just a very big backdrop of how we expressed ourselves when we were younger. A lot of singing and dancing and just kind of free play, free roaming, free play.
Oh, I love that. Are you a Wolverines fan or a Spartans?
Oh, funny you ask. I would have been a Wolverines fan. It's so funny because I actually was on a baseball team when I was younger, a co-ed baseball team called the Wolverines. That was my very first baseball team. So I guess I would say that, but I don't follow too many sports nowadays. Right. My older sister is a diehard Packers fan, and it was always like Lions versus Packers.
Yeah.
And I grew up thinking I was a Lions fan, but my sister was, and to this day is, like legitimately one of the most diehard Packer fans that you can possibly imagine. So there was always that rivalry between us and Wisconsin.
Oh, I love that. I asked because my step family is from Michigan, Ann Arbor,
funny.
Detroit. Yeah. So
amazing. Funny enough, Ann Arbor was where I was born.
Oh.
And then I moved quite youngly up to, youthfully. I must have been, I was a toddler. Moved back up to the UP where my family was originally based, but my dad was going to school at the time that I was born in U of M.
Wow. So yeah, go blue.
Exactly.
Love it. Oh my God.
Yeah.
What kind of music was being played in your household then?
There was a lot of, as I said, like a lot of music that would go with basically figure skating programs. My parents did their best. They weren't, high into all sorts of different cultural avenues, and we didn't have a lot of exposure to. It was very Midwestern, pre-internet life, right? So there were Disney movies, tons of Disney songs, I would say. A little bit of Broadway music, like I remember Phantom of the Opera, Fiddler on the Roof. We were exposed to classical music occasionally, and then maybe things like Michael Jackson's Thriller.
Heck yeah.
Was playing a lot. Amy Grant, like there was a lot of like Christian rock music that would play in our house, which we all like sort of laugh and bop around about, now.
Yeah.
How funny that backdrop was. Muppet Babies Christmas Carol was like a staple. So we would do a lot of mimicking those animals. And yeah, that's sort of it was I would say a very like vibrant, if not chaotic, household with 4 girls running around like crazy nuts.
Understood. What was the first band or musician that really got your attention when you were young?
That's a hard one for me to actually... I'd say the first people that I can consciously remember buying music for when I was capable of or asking for it and then getting those soundtracks for Christmas or whatever was Janet Jackson, Michael Jackson, and Weird Al Yankovic. Those were like, I really, really dug that stuff. And I would try to memorize the lyrics, and I would sit in the basement and I would just like dance and sing and try to memorize those songs.
Then I'm sure when Weird Al came out with Eat It, you were just living
I was
for
all
it.
over that. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Well, this next question requires a bit of context. Okay, so here we go. I am a producer and audio engineer at WGCU Public Media. It's a NPR PBS station here in Southwest Florida. And we have this other show called 3 Song Stories where the guests will come in, they pick 3 songs that every time they listen to these songs, they immediately get transported back to a time and place that they have a significant story associated with. I want to ask you, off the top of your head, do you have one song story that comes to mind?
I could go to very different places with those different songs, of course, because, yeah, they really do define periods of time. That's a really nice thing. I mean, I could say, first and foremost, the Beauty and the Beast soundtrack, but very specifically, Tale as Old as Time, sung by Angela Lansbury, was a song that I skated to. And of course, so I listened to it over and over and over again. And it was a happy time. And that song, and it was something where we had an ice show, a local ice show that I was kind of featured in at the time because we were really heavy into figure skating, and my mom helped found the club, and then we helped kind of teach the younger kids. And I remember skating to that soundtrack on the ice rink in tiny little Lance, Michigan, which is like a population, 2,500 people. But the rink was full of great energy. It was a very magical sort of, Disney themed ice show. And I recall if that year, there was some interesting stuff that happened for me where I realized I could be a sort of mentor or a leader in the community, because as I was skating to that song, there were younger kids watching, and I got off the ice and I would speak to them, and then somehow that made the local paper, like the tiny, tiny local paper. And I remember being very, very proud of this and like kind of amazed that I got some sort of highlighted spot.
Yeah.
And it probably lit some sort of fire, like, wow, if you work at this stuff, you can get, some sort of recognition for it, but also you can use it for good. You can be a mentor figure in this way for younger kids. So I don't know. I think of that song and I think of Angela Lansbury's very warm voice. I was such a fan of Angela Lansbury. She had just her incredible acting chops. So I think of that as like a young child in a tiny town before you hit adolescence,
right,
before teenagehood where things get complicated. It was like a less complicated time. I think of that song.
Tale as old as time, song as old as rhyme. Beauty and the Beast.
Oh, that's lovely. Do you have a copy of that newspaper still?
Gosh, I wonder if my parents do. I don't with me. I have other newspapers, but I don't have that one.
Understood. How does that song fit into your life today?
Well, I guess the weird thing about that now is I hear stories of Angela Lansbury. Well, now it's very strange because so much has shifted since that point. Now I do events. Now I do Comic-Cons. And so actually just a few weeks ago, I was at a Comic-Con with like Paige O'Hara and, Jodie Benson from Beauty and the Beast. So I actually, in some way, am now a colleague of some of the people that I never would have dreamed having met. I didn't even really think about, you can do this for a living. I didn't sort of think about that at that time in my life. It wasn't until university. So now that it's really flipped. I guess I'm sort of on the other side of what is ultimately a very strange career where I have accomplished certain things, or it's brought me into certain spaces that I've met the very people that I grew up, having the voice in my ear for as I was just dancing and singing along,
Yeah. Oh man, that's so beautiful. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. Oh man, it's just really
question.
Huh?
It's a cool question.
Oh,
I'm sure,
thank you.
it's a really interesting question. I bet people have such fascinating answers to that always.
Yeah. Not only like during the actual 3 Song Story show, there's a lot of local people coming in, because we're small shows, a local building, whatever. But every week we talk to people and they tell like these 3 amazing stories. They're it's a lot. Some people say it's like a therapy session. We have like a box of tissues in the studio just in case. But yeah, there's a lot of fascinating stories that can come out of music, not only on 3 songs, but from the people I've talked to here on this show, the Razzle Dazzle Show. Some amazing stories that I've had the pleasure of having that shared with me. It's beautiful. It's amazing. So thank you.
My pleasure.
Well, now let's shift gears a little bit and let's get into your career now. Before we get into the voice acting, you're also a musician. You have your own band, the Summersetts. I've also been listening to everything that's on Spotify of your band nonstop for like the past week. So I feel like I'm very familiar with it. I think
goodness.
I think my favorite has to be I'm Coming Over. That's it. There's just there's something. It's a nice story being told there. When I first heard that song, I guess this is a mini song story. When I first heard that song on my way to work, I just kept thinking like, this makes me feel like I'm listening to the conversation in Baby It's Cold Outside. And I get that kind of vibe, But yeah, you're also a musician. So can you tell us how did you get into your musical journey and creating this, and starting your performances?
That's such an interesting question. So I have 3 sisters, and they're all doing music right now. And when we can, we collaborate on that. But my band Summersett so there's the Summersett Sisters. That's the collaboration with my 3 sisters. I was very much inspired by my older sister, who was a singer-songwriter, and at one point after high school, she attended Kalamazoo, the university, Western Michigan University, and then headed straight for LA and said, "I want to make it as a singer-songwriter." It was a very, impractical, dreamy, and wonderful thing that she did after getting her marketing degree, and headed down there and ultimately shift courses after a while. But she was very much an inspiration for so much of my creative development when I was younger, because we were 2 years apart, and she was the music fanatic growing up. I was kind of more digesting, taking things in, and performing with her, but it was, I have a hard time calling myself a musician. I usually don't. I call myself like a music maker or a singer, because I do not play an instrument well. My instrument is my voice. And so I'm a collaborator with other people. There are also certain styles of music that I would stay completely away from, that I do not sing. Like, don't ask me to do anything Broadway or belt. It's really just, original music that I create with essentially my ex, who is a creative partner of mine for like 17 years now, or 18 years by this point. My my ex Nick Carpenter. I wouldn't refer to him. I just say my friend because we have this long-standing friendship. But we started dating and then quickly realized that actually why we loved each other was because we were amazing friends and supposed to be like creative soulmates. But domestically we were like, this probably isn't where it's supposed to go. It's probably supposed to go here where we do constant collaborations and we can like sit in this bubble together. So Summersett Band from Montreal is created with him. And he's a playwright and a musician, and kind of he's sort of steeped in like maybe classical piano, but really more like cabaret classical piano playwright, like just a kind of hodgepodge. So our musical landscape comes from a background in theater, where both of us collaborated on many theater productions, many times. We've tried things like the album was finally born out of trying many things like cabaret pieces. Even a little burlesque at one point, just for fun, because that's what everybody in Montreal did. At one point, we co-founded a skating company that basically had one show that we performed in Toronto, and he created the music and live sound effects, and I danced to it and created this show as a winter sprite. And we brought it to the Arctic and performed it there. And so we'd done all this stuff. And then eventually we were like, why don't we make an album? So we eventually, after that, gathered a band of local musicians that he'd sort of worked with through theater and just started like gigging. And that eventually led to a first album. And then we took a big hiatus and then created a second album. So I don't know, the music is born really from something that isn't like a music scene for us. We've always been a little bit more, I don't think we've ever felt like we've really fit in there. So we've been like, well, I guess it's indie folk, kind of art folk. It's really just sort of based on a lot of different kinds of art that happen to take the form in an album for us.
Right.
Yeah. Does that make sense? I don't know.
It does. I mean, what you're describing is sometimes music can't be described. It's just what it's feeling, right? It's just vibes, It's just like what you want to pour out from your heart. That's what you're making, I guess.
Yeah, and like you can draw from other art forms for structure too. I mean, you have to have obviously like musical structure to create music to some degree, and he has that on the piano. And but when we talk about creating songs, we often talk about plays. We talk about just story structure versus song structure. We'll sort of just jet around with whatever we feel like, and the point of making it has always been make the most. I guess like organic is a horrible word, but. The like free-flowing, non-commercial, doesn't have to be what it doesn't want to be. It's like we're really doing this for us and the camaraderie of the band when we get a chance to gig with them. And it's just experimenting. It's good for the brain. It's good for the heart. And then there are perks of like networking and finding like fascinating people because you can share like, hey, I have music, you have music. Let's go gig together or listen or have this conversation because you can make music. So
I love that so much, and I really feel that whole storytelling bit. Like I said, in "I'm Coming With You," it's. Did I get the title?
The song
right?
"I'm Coming Over."
I'm coming over. Oh my god, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it is kind of like a two-way dialogue. Yeah, I totally very much,
Sorry for forgetting the title as soon as I said it. Jesus.
You probably created a better title than what we had. I'm Coming With You. Which is essentially what the song means.
Right.
You basically just created the subtext for our song. Thank you.
So from my understanding, from the research I've done, you also have a degree in theaters and performing theaters, musical theater. And there's a lot of overstacking or overlapping things you've done to get you into the voice acting world, right? I kind of want to fine tune and hone down into what initially drew you to voice acting to continue pursuing this role. Was there a particular moment or inspiration that came about? Sorry that I fumbled that question.
Yeah, no, gosh, not at all. No, and it's also quite an interesting thing to try to formulate and amalgamate.
Right.
So my degree is in classical acting. Musical theater was never a pursuit of mine. I just I did a little bit of it in high school. Did like Lola and Damn Yankees and Cha-Cha in Greece, which was always like a bit of a, in a very small area. We're talking like Houghton, Michigan. So I was able to get those roles. Had I been in a larger place, maybe I would not have, and it would have totally changed the course of my life. but I was able to be a little bit of a bigger fish in a smaller pond. And so you put a good amount of energy and you can sort of make strides. And I was like, oh, you get affirmations for these things. Acting in general, first and foremost, was theater. It was theater and ice dance for me. Those things led to eventually pursuing ice dance first, which led me to Quebec. Mm-hmm. I fell in love with a French-Canadian ice dancer down in Florida when we were all training together, moved to Quebec, back to that family area.
Wasn't it in Miami or am I misremembering?
It wasn't in Miami. It was in Florida. It was in Sarasota.
Oh, okay.
Actually, no, sorry. It was Ellenton, really close to Sarasota. It was in Ellenton, Florida. There was this ice rink there called the JP Igloo. It had several pieces of ice on it. It was mainly a hockey place, but it also had an internationally recognized place for figure skating that had all these coaches from all over the world and world-class figure skaters at this rink. So it was this fascinating little place in a hot area that had this very cool scene. And so I headed down there. I was there for maybe less than a year and then ultimately ended up moving to Quebec.
Understood. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no, gosh, not at all. My goodness. We're just having a free flow conversation. And you're talking about like, the point is like, how did the voice acting come to be?
Yes.
It really did come through a combination of my sensibilities of wanting to do live theater and be a creative somatic performer, like something through my body. I really had always been a mover, and the figure skating meant a lot to me. But when that ended, I found theater, and theater was like this huge breath of fresh air. I was like, oh my gosh, I think this is what I was intended to do, and it ultimately has a larger shelf life. And so I found voice acting in university at the same time as I was pursuing theater. It just happened to be that it was a different way to transform. One of the teachers there happened to be a voice actor, and so she had us do like a mock-up demo. Mm-hmm. And it was then that I realized like, oh, a lot of these jingles and stuff that I did when I was a child actually come in handy here. I tend to have a propensity to do this anyway. It wasn't something that was foreign to me. And I was also surprised that a lot of the other people in the class that wanted to pursue acting didn't really care about the voice acting, but it was like me and one other person that really were just like, we like this, very much. And so we put a lot of energy into it. And I remember even at that point, I was like, oh, I can reproduce a child, an older person, and like middle age, and I can kind of play around with it. And I found it so surprising and so gratifying and delightful. And then I instantly started to develop that because I thought, I really want to make a career out of this. And however I can get paid to make a career out of this, I'm just going to develop all these skills. And at the time, it wasn't a saturated industry. At the time, it was way lesser known that you would be doing this. I didn't really know about the LA scene per se. Mm-hmm. I was based in Montreal, and so I just started from where I was at and made my demos and did my first little strange commercials, drove to places to do them in like out of province in the country area, wherever the studio was, I'd go. And I was just so delighted to get paid in any way from acting. So yeah, I think that's when it came to a head for me, was like, oh, in university, when I was already pursuing acting and I realized that this was a branch of acting that I just definitely was going to pursue. And then after that, I realized that video games were this whole new kind of developing avenue, and I was just naturally interested in it. And there was a place to do it. There was Ubisoft. There were these other indie game companies in Montreal. And so I started knocking on these doors. I pushed pretty hard. And I realized after the classical acting degree, when I made my way back to Canada, I was like, I really don't want to do classical acting. I would like to use classical acting, but I'm not finding this form very fulfilling for me. And I thought, where is the biggest reach with the form that's the most gratifying? What's the form that I'm looking for? And I was like, video games is a really fascinating form. It has a very long arm, and it has classic storytelling, and it has a lot of the stuff that I've been training for. And yet it's like so unknown that it seems so, it's like where the innovation is happening. Mm-hmm. It's the most alive right now. And so I naturally gravitated towards that too. It was just, it all happened that way and fairly intuitively as I was, struggling and muckling my way through those many beginning years where you're just very poor, you're trying to figure it out, you're doing auditions and all. It can be such a mess for such a long time when you're starting up that kind of career.
Right. You also not only lent your voice, but for that physical aspect of it, mocap, motion captures, and you've worked on an incredible amount of games and big games too, Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, and of course, thank you for the segue, by the way, and of course, the legend of Zelda. It's a big deal, not only because it's Zelda, right? But you are the first official mainline game voice of the titular character. Of course, not including the cartoons or the CDI games, that nobody talks about. I just want to ask, can you tell the story of how you ended up in that role? I've also had another first time voice of a long time standing character, Jessica Erin Martin. She was the first official voice of Samus Aran in Metroid Other M. And her story was similar to what I found from yours. It's like she didn't even know what she was auditioning for, and then she just got told later on when she got it that it was for this. Like as soon as she walked in the studio, you're like, okay, you're this lead character in this amazing, well-established franchise.
Yeah, that's so often how it happens, Jared. Like I'm sure you've heard these stories a lot, but for me, it's similar to what you've just mentioned. And, it's mind blowing. And I'm still mind blown about these sorts of things occurring whenever they do, because quite frankly, I'm just always amazed when I'm working. And it seems to get more amazing the older that I get, when things either come to me or I land auditions. I'm just like, wow, I'm so lucky that I get to work this time, because you do so many, there's so many you don't land. And the Zelda thing happened for me when I was, again, at the chapter of a next huge move for myself. And I was moving from Canada. I'd done London, Toronto, back in Montreal. And I was like, okay, I'm now ready. I feel like I'm making new ground in my career. I'm going to move to LA, I'm going to pursue it down there, and I'm going to specialize a little bit more in voice acting, kind of give us a go. And for gosh sakes, it's like the first thing that I auditioned for when I got down there. There was one other thing that I auditioned for like years earlier when I was doing a trial period in LA. And that was like, it was like a 2-liner for The Bold and the Beautiful. I somehow got this audition, walked down this large corridor in heels, which felt very uncomfortable, sat in front of a casting director, went into a room and went blank. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. It was like the worst audition experience ever. That was like my one other one years earlier. So when I moved to LA, I got back down there and I was submitting auditions. We submitted stuff, and then we got called in for callbacks or whatever that was. I'm trying to remember, but it was all, in studio at that point, much more than it is nowadays. And yeah, I got the casting call. I had submitted my demos that were pretty advanced by this point, because I'd been doing it for 10 years or whatever. And got the casting call. This guy, Jamie Mortellaro, the very wonderful Jamie Mortellaro, invited me in. I auditioned for several characters. Everybody was auditioning for several characters at this time. And I got a call back for a few of them. And I just thought with the Zelda style character, because of course it was a Bleach script, didn't know what it was. And I was like, well, I don't usually get these ones, like this style of character, but I'm going to give it a good go. Because, why not? I usually get like the throaty, low-voiced warrior characters.
Right.
Which ended up being like, Urbosa and stuff that Elizabeth Maxwell nailed, which is so awesome, because obviously she really rocks that role. And now we're good friends, which is even more lovely. But yeah, I just sort of developed a voice, did this sort of thing here. And I was like, lift it. And I was like, okay, right there seems sustainable. I'm also going to give her a bit of an RP because it's a princess character, but I really didn't know much about it except that she was, sort of repressed weight of the world on her shoulders, like those sort of descriptors. And and then they played with it. I could tell that they liked it. I was given direction in the room, kind of asked to try a few different things, to sort of stretch the voice in different directions a little bit. And then I left and I felt pretty good about what I'd done. And I was just like, oh man, if I could nail one of these roles, it would be so great, whatever it is. I just need something. I've moved here.
Feeling.
It's this big deal. Yeah, big deal. And then, landed the role. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool.
Yeah.
And then I went in and then it just got even cooler. It was then it turned from really cool to, oh my God, is this going to change my life a little bit? Sign the NDA and they're like, this is Princess Zelda. And you're like, what? Just unbelievable. Unbelievable.
It's so crazy how big these games got. You have a trilogy under you for this same character. I know technically one of them is not canon or whatever, but still, there's 3 games for this particular these particular characters, this specific Zelda, and you bring out such, depth for this character. There's, that we've never seen before in any of the games, because how could we? All we see is just text. But not to discredit like the other versions of this character. They are amazing in their own right. Twilight Princess, Wind Waker is very complex, Ocarina of Time, right? Whatever. But there's a level of complexity with Zelda. There's a lot of emotions, there's a lot of vulnerability, and there's a lot of parts where like, she's this very wise character, because of course she is, Triforce of Wisdom, but she's struggling to like do the next right thing. And it's just the whole journey. We know it. Like Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild has been out for a while now. Like we know the legend, right? So, and of course I know I can talk about this for a long time, but with the limited time we have, Zelda is the symbol of wisdom and strength throughout the entire series, especially these last 3 games. In what ways do you personally relate to Zelda, and have you found any parts of her character inspiring your own life?
So I get asked this question sometimes, and I find it a tricky one. I would say because the answers for these things sort of change day to day.
Yeah.
And it kind of depends on what I want to lean into. But I would say a big theme in Zelda's life and a big theme in mine is nature. We're both very she's a natural character. She's somebody who likes to be outdoors, especially the version that I got to voice. Thankfully, it was written that way. I love it. How lucky am I that I got to voice something that was written with the depth, written with a sort of lighter and darker quality and a roundedness that you can only stretch so far as the form that you're in sometimes. And so yay that got to happen. Thank you, Nintendo. But yeah, I would say nature. I've said this before on panels, but like, I really love frogs. Like I grew up, like frogs were my best friends. I was playing with them all the time. I would kiss them. Like I'm serious. I would kiss frogs because I love them. I tried to pet them. Frogs and toads. They were like, I have so many pictures of myself with like a bunch of frogs and toads when I was younger. My first horrible dramatic story as a young person dealing with death was I killed a frog on accident by putting it into a jar, and then the sun magnified it, and the thing didn't jump out because it doesn't regulate its body that way. And I killed it. It was one of like the most tragic moments of my young life where I realized like I did that and I didn't help the frog get out of the jar, and it could have jumped out, but it didn't because it's not built like I am,
right.
To be like, I'm too hot. So frogs have this huge theme in my life. And so I really related to her, I don't know, her enthusiasm with nature. So, yeah. And in terms of, like morals and like, I love doing like the courage quote, courage need not be remembered, for it is never forgotten. There's so many people with whom that quote resonates. So it's really fun for me to go around and feel like I can be a smiling face and a voice for people at various places, in various places in the world who want to just basically celebrate the franchise, celebrate that character, and then they can kind of come to me and say what they love about the character and come up with quotes of their own that they enjoy. But a lot of people really like that quote, and we're all looking for the same qualities that, she just gets basically flogged in that game. Like, she is such a hard protagonist. There's so much that comes at her. It's so hard. And she's somehow able to persist and follow through and conjure things within herself that are incredible. And we all wish for that kind of, not just courage and power, but certainly wisdom that comes from that sort of experience of hardships in a way, like where you can come out the other end of it and feel hopeful. Yeah. I take those things. She's such a great archetypal character and beyond. It's so great that she's fleshed out. So.
I love that
answer.
No, I love it. Thank you so much. Well, right now we're going to get into the speed round where I'm going to ask you a bunch of silly random questions. We're going to see how you do. You ready?
Yep.
Okay. If you were the final boss in a video game, what would your title be?
Let's go with a theme on my last name and something that sounds a little bit like Game of Thrones. Winter Rise, Blight of the Winter Rise.
Ooh, I like that.
Summersett Winter Rise. So, yeah.
That's so clever. If your current favorite show or movie were to be adapted into a musical, what genre of music would you envision for it?
Oh my gosh. Not even sure I have a current favorite show right now. I haven't watched The Bear. I heard it was great. What did I last watch that was amazing? Let's say Fleabag.
Wow.
I really enjoyed that. There's so many great ones, but that one comes up randomly. Fleabag, and the style of music would be a combination of like jazz and let's say like crazy folk jazz with like a Tom Waits feel in the back.
I'd love
that. I'd love
that. What would your 14-year-old self think of who you are today?
You know, she'd be very happy. She'd be very happy. 14 me was a pretty depressed little girl living in a recessed town, went through a hard high school thing. And to be able to tell anybody at that age, like, hey, it can get so interesting after this. Just keep going. It's always a great thing. And so I think she'd be like, wow, adult life can actually be like incredible. So yeah.
Oh, I love it. Well, it is now time for you to recommend 3 people that you'll share this episode with when it comes out, if you think they'll be a good guest on the show and that you're going to help me get them on the show.
So I would say one that comes to mind who I've loved to interview in the past with is Victoria Atkin. She's a wonderful Assassin's Creed actor. She teaches. She's just such an eloquent human being. I'm going to say Cissy Jones as well. And then maybe, let's go Canadian. There's an awesome actor named Skylar Clark who she's Montreal based. She does theater, video games. She's in some pretty cool big stuff that hasn't come out yet. And she's the bomb. She's also a musician. She reminds me a bit of a younger version of myself. Aww. And I'm really I'm like, wow, what a badass. I mean, a younger version of me, but also like very much her own brand of awesome. So yeah, I'd say Skylar Clark. Yeah, Victoria Atkins, Cissy Jones, and Skylar Clark.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, we'll see what we can do to get them on the show. Do you have any final thoughts?
Thoughtless. Imagine that. I'm just like, I have nothing in my brain. No, I mean, my thoughts are that I've really enjoyed, I think music and video games are so related, so that's really fun to talk about those things. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have anything to plug. If people want to find me, they can sort of know where to go.
Oh, I'll plug you in the outro and description.
I don't really care. I'm not like, social media is awesome. I do my best, but mostly I just, I'm
jump
better
on
offline,
beds.
Really. I'm better in real life.
Yeah.
I thank you for your time, Jared.
No, thank you for your time. This has been an honor. It's a real dream come true, and thank you for allowing me to have this opportunity to talk to you, have a one-on-one, a nice conversation with you. I understand with your limited time it can only be so long, but regardless, I thank you for every second, and I truly appreciate it.
My pleasure. You're welcome.
All right, that's all the time we have for today, guys. If you want to hear more from Patricia, be sure to check out her website at patriciasummersett.com, and be sure to follow her on Instagram, X, and Facebook. If you want to check out her band, Summersett Band, go to summersetband.com, and you can find them on Spotify, Apple Music, Bandcamp, and wherever else you get your music. Links to everything will be in the description down below. Be sure to let us know what you think about this episode somewhere on the internet, and be sure to follow us on Instagram at Razzle Dazzle Show, on TikTok at Razzle_Dazzle_Show, on Blue Sky at Razdaz Show Pod, and on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Raz_Daz_Pod. Be sure to rate us 5 stars and leave a comment down below. We'll catch you on the next one.
Next time on The Delta Quest. Will our heroes make it to the next town over without bickering all day? Will Urzak ever stop cooking up nuclear fantasy schemes behind his DM's back? And does the ship of Theseus paradox now apply to Zambo? Find out next time on The Delta Quest.